Our goal is to make as much money for the shareholders as we can in the nearer term, which means the next year to 2 years, not long term.
Joining us for a conversation is Rano Pertu, the CEO of Provenance Gold. Mr. Pertu, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you on the program, to have you introduce us to Provenance Gold, which I have to tell you has some very compelling gold and silver projects throughout Nevada, and as of this morning has expanded their footprint into Oregon. Before we delve into company specifics, Mr. Pertu, please introduce us to Provenance Gold and the exciting opportunity the company presents to shareholders.
We have right now 3 projects in Nevada that I think are all individually exciting, and one in Oregon that I think is a game changer. We have a project called White Rock in northeastern corner in Nevada that I think is going to become a very serious major deposit. We have a project called Mineral Hill, which is a silver project that is potentially a large bulk mineable silver target. We have one in central Nevada that has a flow dome complex that I think is going to be a gold surface mine with deep potential for high grade as well. And then we have the Oregon project, which is recently acquired, which has a proven drilled resource of multi-million ounce gold right now at a higher than average grade for open pit mines.
Let's find out more. Mr. Pertu, please introduce us to your property bank, which is strategically located throughout Elephant Country, and that is regarded in the top jurisdiction for exploration and mining, Nevada. Sir, take us to Nevada and introduce us to the flagship White Rock Gold Project.
The White Rock project was brought to us by Jerry Boffman, and we looked at the project. The reason we took it on was because Steve Craig, our project manager and expert for Nevada, had drilled it for Kennecott years ago and loved the project. In that work that we did from historic data that we had acquired, we recognized that the property was much bigger than what was brought to us. So we expanded it to 258 claims, about 5,160 acres. And in that acreage, we have an area 3.2 kilometers by 1.6 kilometers that is virtually continuously surface mineralized. That project, we started drilling in last year in the spring of 2021, and we put in 35 holes that added to 65 holes that were drilled historically that all showed a bulk tonnage half a gram per ton gold system that appears to be continuous in sedimentary rocks. And we are looking not only at the bulk tonnage potential, but we think at the end of our drilling program, we found first a feeder structure that will bring higher grades and actually increase the overall grade as we move forward.
Continuity and feeder zone. I love that. Now, Providence Gold believes the geology of the White Rock mineral system has similarities to the geology of the nearby Black Pine gold system in southern Idaho. Can you expand on that for us?
That is what intrigued me right off the bat. I've had a lot of background in thrust faulting and thrust complexes. And when I looked at the geology of the Black Pine of Liberty Gold there, about 50 miles to the east, it was virtually identical. Their mineralization is within a thrust zone package, and that thrust package is gold mineralized. We are in, I believe, the same thrust package, but we're higher in the system. So we're looking at a structure that is our arched dome. A dome is basically that kind of a structure out there that has been faulted as part of the doming, and it's formed by the thrusting underneath. So what we're looking at is the same aged rocks, the same lithology as Black Pine, and I believe a system that is going to repeat as well as another area that we have to the west. So we have 2 potential Black Pine type deposits under control right now.
And speaking of the lithology, can you share the historic exploration work?
The project was actually looked at by several companies, including Kennecott, and they drilled widely spaced holes. The widely spaced holes had up to over 300 feet of continuous gold mineralization. And nobody ever put it together. And the reason they never put it together is Company A would come in and they would look at one part of the project. Company B would come in and look at a different one. When Steve Craig's company, Kennecott, in which I was in senior management years in the past, came in and looked at it, they were looking for a higher grade system, which was in vogue at that time. They wanted at least several grams of gold per ton. Today, by the way, the average grade of the Nevada mines is about half a gram, which is what this project is. So they walked, even though Steve was intrigued, and he actually hit one of his holes, went 5.7 grams in one of the zones that we have not yet followed up on. That project is going to continue to expand as we drill to the south, because the best surface shows we have not yet reached with our drill rig. So what we did was we started at the north end, worked our ways southeastward until the weather drove us south.
And may I ask this as well? You referenced that you began your inaugural drill campaign. How many pending assays are there still?
We have gotten all the assays for this season back already. That was 35 holes. We had a terrible problem with drilling that will not be a problem with a mine. And that's that as we came into the main gold area, we would run into open fractures, big cracks in the rock. And the reason that becomes a problem is with a drill rig and the cracks in the rock, you can lose your drill steel, which we did on more than one occasion. And we can also get stuck and back out because you don't want to drill any further. We worked around that problem, and we ended up with a solution going forward. But what we have outlined now is a gold area that is going to extend. We have extended it right now for about 1.5 kilometers. We are planning on extending it another 1.5 kilometers, heading southward into an area that has the best surface shows of any part of the property not yet drilled.
Well, before we leave the White Rock, what work is currently being conducted there, sir?
We are right now having Steve and a couple of his assistants working on getting a 43101 presentation to show the resource as it stands at the moment. And beyond that, we are also putting together a detailed structural picture. What we found is that the dome itself is mineralized in sedimentary rocks, but the higher grade portions are in the feeder structures that bring the mineralization into those dome structures. And the detailed geology is starting to fall into place when they go back in and look at the chip tray.
Leaving Nevada, let's visit Oregon, where Provenance Gold announced today that it expanded its footprint with the newly acquired Eldorado property, which hosts not one, not two, but 3 historic resource estimates. Mr. Pertu, congratulations.
Thank you.
Please acquaint us with the Eldorado property, beginning with the location, and what can you share with us about the historic resource estimates?
Okay, well, first of all, the reason that we got into this was because we'd done a great job by Jerry Boffman's estimate on White Rock, and we're doing that. And so he offered this, which was being looked at hard by a major, and we basically got first rights ahead of the major, which I was very pleased with. But that project is in Harney County in the eastern part of the state near Nevada. And it's in a county that, contrary to Western Oregon, is very friendly to mining and is treated separately from the permitting difficulties that you hear about in Western Oregon. So in fact, I'll back up. I have a good friend who's a regulator, the chief regulator for that area for Oregon, who has now just retired, unfortunately. But anyway, he told me that Oregon was misconstrued by the outside world. He said you can permit a mine in Oregon, in Eastern Oregon, and that there is one that is being mined or permitted successfully right now. And he said we should be tackling this before everybody recognizes the error of their ways, and this is a great area to be in. So we tackled the project we were stunned to find out that it had three estimates by Billiton and by Icon in the past. And they had drilled 142 holes, done trenching and all this other testing way back historically, maybe 30 years ago. And those results originally on 150 holes were on the order of about 800,000 ounces. Then Icon took the data and drilled 50 more holes and expanded the resource to about 2 million ounces at a grade of 0.22, better than half a gram by considerable. Mm-hmm. And then they did one more re-estimate on that thing a little bit later that jumped the area that they were comfortable with to 4 million ounces at a grade of 0.22 ounce per ton. And the geologist who worked on that project told us, because he's still around and still working, that he was surprised to find that it was open in every direction. That resource is not going to stay at 4 million ounces in his estimation. It's going to expand considerably.
Oh, that's encouraging to hear. Well, and that may actually answer my next question, but what has your team excited the most about the Eldorado property?
Two things. First of all, it has higher grade portions. It has places that go to as high as an ounce per ton. It's a system that when they drilled it, they cut off most of the holes at 500 feet. They were not looking for feeder structures. What has happened since then is we have seen that the mineralization continues on down. It continues outward. So we have a property where we can start at a much higher grade, but have an overall grade that's better than 0.2 ounce per ton, which is unusually high for an open pit these days.
All right, you have three historic resource estimates, I should say. Does Provenance Gold have a timeline on when the Eldorado property will become 43-101 compliant, and how will this come to fruition?
What we are planning on doing this spring is as soon as, I'll back up one more time, we've had a record snowpack in the Northwest. So that's going to possibly slow us down a few weeks. But as soon as the snow is out and we can get it permitted, the permitting process will be no longer than 30 days. We will be putting a drill rig on site. That drill rig will focus on twinning some of these historic holes so that we can make those holes compliant. As you may know, 43-101s have a different set of rules than they did before 43-101s.
Yes,
and all of these holes were drilled prior to 43-101 requirements. So what we plan to do is to verify those holes, even though they were drilled for internal use by very reputable companies using very good labs. So we're comfortable on the results. We're planning on drilling possibly 15 to 20 confirmation holes and using that data to then compile a 43-101 that will verify those resource estimates that were done in the past.
And maybe this is too early to tell, but how many meters will that be, sir, of drilling?
It's a little early off the top of my head, but take 20 holes at an average depth of 500-600 feet, and there's your number.
Okay. All right. Leaving the Eldorado property, sir, please introduce us to the third compelling project in your portfolio, Mineral Hill, which looks to be endowed with tons of silver.
Mineral Hill is an odd property. I wasn't taking it very seriously until I went out and saw it, and we acquired it because it's a ridge that was mined for high-grade silver starting in 1868, and that mining continued until the 1930s. When they started it, they were getting silver at grades of about 140 ounces per ton, which is remarkable. As they ended mining, they were in 25 ounce per ton material, which, by the way, the reason for the high grade was because it was secondarily enriched, which silver does. And when they got out of that secondary enrichment zone. The average grade of that zone was about 25 ounces per ton. Well, they're waste rock, and there's a copious volume of waste rock on the property. A stunning amount of waste rock on that property, averages about 120 grams, between 3 and 4 ounces silver per ton on bulk testing that was done prior to our coming in. So you compare that to a project like Core's Rochester mine, which is mining a half-ounce silver per ton, and you can see where 3-4 ounce silver per ton is a very economic number on a bulk tonnage situation. So we are going to be we have a road that needs to be widened and improved, and we're going to get a drill rig in there probably toward the end of this coming summer, because our priorities are the two that I mentioned earlier, and putting some confirmation holes into that silver structure. The reason I like it is the mineralization is focused on a thrust fault that's standing on its end. And that thrust fault has a zone of mineralization about 300 feet, 100 meters wide, a lot associated with it. That zone is about 1 kilometer north-south. And we think that there's no reason to have chopped off the mining in the old days, other than the fact that they ran into groundwater problems, which would not be a problem today.
And I'm assuming that you will be twinning these holes as well?
Yes, very much. Well, actually, in that area, we don't need to. The package that, when you see that property, it looks like Swiss cheese. I mean, there are huge workings in there, and twinning holes isn't going to do us any good. What we're going to do is put angle holes across that thrust fault, working our way downhill. The deposit is on a funny little hogsback ridge like this, and you can which actually for mining is going to be wonderful because of strip ratios. But anyway, we're going to drill from the side holes coming on in through the thrust zone and chase it on down that way.
Interesting. Leaving Mineral Hill, sir, introduce us to your fourth and final project, the Silver Bow, which seems to be the perfect complement to Mineral Hill.
Yes, Silver Bow is about 50 miles east of Tonopah in central South Nevada. And it's a gold system that has been looked at by a lot of companies, but nobody put it together. We came in there and recognized that that whole district, which is about 4 miles long and a couple of miles wide, is part of the same system associated with the caldera. And when we looked at it, we recognized that the geologists that had drilled it in the past in one spot or another spot had never put the package together because they didn't understand the geology. The geology is a caldera complex. Within it, there are flow domes, which are piles of rhyolitic volcanics that are associated with a lot of the gold discoveries in Nevada. I mean, big discoveries. So what we're going to look at is going to a flow dome complex that we've identified that has surface sampling of a breccia zone that is all economic potentially for open pit grade up to multi-gram, and look at that for an open pit. Yet at the same time, there are swarms of veins that cross this flow dome, this volcanic pile. And those flow dome structures, the veins are associated with a boiling zone. And those boiling zones in Nevada have been the host for some very high grade, and elsewhere in the world, very high grade gold discoveries. So we're excited to test the boiling zones of these vein structures, as well as look at the bulk tonnage of breccia zone that already has economic surface numbers across a big area.
Have drill targets been identified, and what is the plan moving forward?
Drill targets have been very much identified. We've done the geology on that thing. We know where the vein structures are. We're planning on setting up and drilling across those vein structures. And if we can do it right, we're going to be drilling some of those holes through that breccia zone that we already know is gold mineralized and into the vein swarms, hopefully at their boiling zones. That's going to be a fun, exciting program.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, before we leave the property bank, multi-layered question. What is the next unanswered question for Providence Gold? When can we expect a response? What determines success? And when can we expect news flow?
Okay, first of all, on news flow, the two news stories that are coming up are going to be the 43 101s that are going to take the next 2-3 months to complete. The next major news flow that we're going to get is going to be when we start doing the twinning at Eldorado, because that's going to, I think, get eyes on us. When you have holes that you can drill that are up to multi-gram for several hundred feet continuously in gold, which the historic holes had, then that's going to catch attention, especially because we're confirming a potentially multi-million ounce resource.
Absolutely. Leaving
So that our,
oh, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I think you have to wonder, what is our long-term plan? Well, obviously, for a junior to advance major projects like this, we need help or a partnership or a takeover. and being as we already appear to have snatched Eldorado from the jaws of a major, I think we're going to have interest as we move forward in that takeover, which would be our goal is to make as much money for the shareholders as we can in the nearer term, which means the next year to 2 years, not long term.
Now, leaving the project site, let's discuss some important topics germane to your projects. Are your projects 100% owned, or do they have earning options?
We have right now, we have an option on Eldorado that means that we will be paying $2 million over 5 years, and we have 100% ownership with the retained royalty. On White Rock, we are paying $250,000 over 5 years, and we will own 100% with a retained royalty. The other two projects, we have very cheap deals that will result in us taking them over the next 7 years and 5 years.
Now, we're going to get into some numbers later in this discussion, but from a capital expenditure standpoint, how is infrastructure on your projects?
Actually, let's go back. They all have, by standards elsewhere in the world, good infrastructure. By Nevada standards, you go off paved roads onto dirt road for a distance and you're there. So they're accessible by drillers and by drill rigs right now. There are motels within driving distance, the whole package. So access is not a problem compared to working, for instance, in northern Canada.
Oh, that's good to hear. Are you fully permitted?
We are fully permitted as we need to be. Our permitting will take place as soon as the snow is gone at Eldorado, and we have confirmed that there will be no problem in permitting our drilling program there. On White Rock, we are permitted, and we actually are adjusting the permits now for the next round of drilling, which is not going to be any hurdle whatsoever. So there's no hurdle that we see in permitting on any of the 4 projects, actually.
Speaking of hurdles, we've discussed the good. Let's address the bad. What can go wrong, and what are your action plans to mitigate that wrong?
Well, the worst thing that can go wrong is gold price can go on the toilet, which I don't believe. And the other thing that we can run into is any changes in the national regulatory system regarding mining. I don't know that that's a risk, but that's a risk anywhere in the world. As far as our projects, I don't see any major downside because we have the funding to drill these projects. We understand the geology, and overall, it's about as good a bet as you're going to get. I think a far safer bet than somebody like Bitcoin.
Well, switching gears, let's introduce your board of directors and your management team who run the majority of the company's operations on a day-to-day basis, beginning with your board of directors, sir.
Okay, actually, the two people that have been really doing most of the work within the board of directors are Rob Clark, our president, and myself.
And on a technical side, you have Steve Craig. What skill sets does he bring to the table?
He's an outside consultant, but he's actually a integral part of the company. I've known Steve for 30 plus years. And when he was exploration manager for Nevada in Kennecott, I was director of business development. We got to be friends. I trust him. He does really good work. He's been involved on discoveries across Nevada. And I think that he will agree with me 100% that we have two discoveries in the making right here.
Who is Ronald Pertu, and what makes him qualified for the task at hand?
Well, I have been, first of all, I have my degrees in geology, and I have started off in geology back in my early 20s. I am now an old fart, and I have been working in geology my entire career in various positions. I've made discoveries, including a major gold system in Montana. I have served in senior positions, including director of business development for Kennecott. And I have looked at properties around the world. My forte, I think, is actually in deciding whether a project is going to be economically developable. And that's because I have had a training from my first boss, who is a geological engineer, who said, your position as geologist for Pacific Power, my first job, which formed NERCO at the time, is not to be a geologist, but to make money for the company. And so I remembered that. And he taught me how to evaluate from a mining standpoint projects. And I have always followed up on that. If you're going to have a mine, you have to cover all the red flags. You can't hide them. You have to face them. And that will actually be your first way of deciding whether it's a good or bad project. If you have a great project, but it's in the middle of Yellowstone Park, you're not going to do anything with it. So we went down that road, and we have used those criteria in our company. So if we have a project, we know it's developable. We learned from the Yukon that even though everything else was right, if the cost is going to be prohibitive and the season is going to be short for a junior, that's not the place to be. So we switched immediately when we made that discovery, and are in a place you can work year round. The costs are very, very good on a development and exploration basis.
Well, I admire the veracity and the perfect blend of that geological and business acumen. It all comes together right here in Providence Gold. How about the boots on the ground? Who do you have on your technical team?
Right now, our main technical team is Steve Craig and myself, and we have brought in other geologists as we need to on a part-time hiring basis. So when we were drilling, we had two geologists that we brought in to sit on the drill rigs with Steve's supervision and my supervision of Steve. The two of us, by the way, have a combined history in the mining business of more than 100 years. And, we have both had extensive experience in both discovery and property development in Nevada.
Well, let's get into some more numbers here. Please provide us with the capital structure for Providence Gold.
Provenance right now, as of the tranche that we just took in, we have about 1.3 million in cash, and that is all we want to take in right now, because we are very concerned about not diluting the company to maximize share value. We have a little less than 80 million shares outstanding right now, and about 33 million, as I recall, warrants, and we're trying to keep that number in that kind of a very manageable level moving forward. We've been offered a lot more money, but we don't want to take it until we need it. And by the way, one of the main reasons we don't want to take it is we think our company is highly undervalued. When you have two potential multi-million ounce projects, two other promising projects, and you're trading at what we're trading at right now, there's something wrong with that picture. I think it's going to be corrected when we do our confirmation drilling at Eldorado.
I have a Rolodex of names in the space here that are very well recognized. And that's the very reason why I have you on this program, because they feel the same way.
Oh, good.
All right, sir. How much debt do you have?
Zero.
And what is your burn rate?
We are when we are not drilling, our burn rate is less than about 20. It's about $20,000 to $30,000 a month. And the reason it's a hard number is you have payments on claims, you have all these other things that come up. So our burn rate is call it $30,000 a month, but it fluctuates completely with what's going on with the program and the timing for paying our claims. In the United States, you pay claims on the first day of August, and it's not a large number, but it's a number that hits once a year.
What percentage ownership does management have, and who are the major shareholders?
I think we have about 15%, but we not only do we have that ownership, a lot of the early stock is in friendly hands. And so actually we are very comfortable that we are in control of the company until we decide that we want to make a deal with a major.
And in reference to that ownership, what is the float? I believe it was around 58 million. Is that correct?
That's what I was just exactly. Yeah.
All right. And are there any redundant assets on the books that we should know about?
No.
Are there any change of control fees? And if yes, what is the compensation?
No, there aren't.
That's impressive. If someone is not aware, that's quite impressive. Very commendable, sir. And is management charging a consulting fee for any services?
They're taking modest salaries. Other than that, no fees other than paying the consulting fees for Steve Craig on a regular as a regular outside consultant.
In closing, sir, what keeps you up at night that we don't know about?
Actually, I sleep very well.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
But what is frustrating to me right now is the fact that we have not gotten the recognition that I thought would be coming our way for having the package that we have and for how high a quality package we have.
Well, I remember offline you were talking about your desire to leave a legacy. Do you want to expand on that?
I am, as I said, an old fart. I'm in great health and all the rest of that. But nevertheless, I actually want to leave something that is worthwhile, that I can be remembered for and I can feel very happy about. So to me, Provenance is that vehicle. I think if we can make Provenance a very successful company, I will die happy. And Steve Craig, by the way, who's almost as old as I am, has exactly the same feeling that this is our last hurrah. I hate that term, but that's what it is. And we're going to make it a good one.
Last question, sir. What did I forget to ask?
Oh, probably any embarrassing questions. And I can't think of anything embarrassing. So I think you did a good job.
Mr. Pertu, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Wishing you and Providence Gold the absolute best, sir.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.